Trump threatens to occupy an African country. Yes, it's no longer just statements about Canada, Venezuela or Iran. Now he's threatening to occupy an African country. Today we are facing a new global conflict. Its main player is a sleeping Chinese dragon and a mysterious military base from which the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen and others were launched. Today, this military base is threatening America's dominance in the Indian Ocean. Perhaps the Afghanistan scenario will be repeated in this African country. Britain has betrayed its ally America in the first British response to the threats from Greenland and Canada. And today we are witnessing this new shift, a suspicious shift really. What is this shift that we are seeing today? This is what we will talk about today. A break and we will continue. Stay with us. Dear viewers, peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings. Welcome to our program today, in this renewed episode, God willing, from the series of Opinion Today. Dear viewers, we will talk about a new conflict, a conflict that has emerged strongly recently and perhaps not everyone has noticed it. If Trump is talking about Greenland and talking about Canada, Venezuela, Iran, Cuba and so on, today there is another conflict. This time this conflict concerns exactly the African continent. We will talk specifically about the country of Mauritius, a small country made up of a group of islands located in the southeast of the African continent, close to Madagascar. Anyway, this country was previously under British occupation and gained its independence from Britain in 1968. But the game that Britain played back then was before granting it independence. And before withdrawing from these islands, it separated some of these islands. This is similar to what the French and Spanish colonialists did in Morocco when they granted independence to Morocco by withdrawing from some areas and keeping other areas as if they were not Moroccan. For example, like what happened in Sidi Ifni, like what happened in the Moroccan Sahara region, and other things that still exist to this day as well. As for these occupied enclaves, Ceuta and Melilla and the remaining islands, Britain did the same thing, exactly the same. It granted independence to Mauritius, but it kept occupying islands as if they did not belong to Mauritius. These islands are called the Chagos archipelago. This archipelago consists of 7 beautiful coral islands. In fact, they are located about 2,000 kilometers from Mauritius, and they are in a very important strategic location deep in the Indian Ocean, close to Mauritius. The Arabian Sea, meaning from the Middle East region, close to India, and close to all the Muslim Asian countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, and so on. These islands, the Chagos archipelago, remained the last British colony in Africa. All these years that have passed, Mauritius was not asleep, and it never gave up on the dream of reclaiming these islands and ending the British colonization of them. And indeed, it achieved successes on the political level, the diplomatic level, and even on the legal level within the British courts and the International Court of Justice in The Hague. They all said that these lands truly belong to Mauritius and that Britain should withdraw from them. Even the United Nations issued the same decision. Even Britain was called upon to return these islands, and even the countries, and even the African countries through the African Union, always demanded that Britain withdraw from these islands. And indeed, after many years of struggle, recently, an agreement was finally reached between the government of Mauritius and the British government, the Keir Starmer government. This agreement stipulates the transfer of sovereignty to Mauritius. It also stipulates that Britain will lease these islands from Mauritius under a lease agreement that lasts for 99 years. This means that the Chagos Islands will actually come under the sovereignty of Mauritius. But Britain will only keep them under a lease agreement, renting them from Mauritius. Why is that? Why will Britain keep them under a lease agreement? The reason is that one of the most important of these islands now hosts one of the most significant British and American military bases. Britain kept these islands not because they have natural resources or anything like that, but only to take advantage of this important strategic location that these islands have had since 1973. Britain and America together are using this island on a military level. They have a military base there, and they are building an air and naval base on it. It carries out logistical missions and very important offensive missions, because through it they deter a number of regions in the Middle East, in Africa, and in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. This military base includes more than 2,500 soldiers from the Air Force and Navy. It has nuclear submarines stationed there, aircraft carriers, and on top of that, there are strategic bombers like the B-2 as well as various other aircraft. Through this military base, the military operations in Iraq and Afghanistan were managed, and today it is also used for operations against the government in Sana'a, Yemen. It is also used to monitor international commercial shipping operations in the region. So the base is very important for this historic American-British alliance, and it has carried out major tasks over the past decades. Therefore, Britain agreed with Mauritius to grant its sovereignty over these islands on the condition that it retains this military base as a lease for 99 years, and in exchange for what? Also, in return, Britain will pay Mauritius about £100 million sterling every year. It will pay £100 million sterling, and it will also pay about £40 million sterling as compensation. This compensation is meant for the inhabitants of Chagos Island, because these inhabitants were forcibly expelled so that the island could become a 100% military zone. This agreement also talks about a closed security zone that extends for about 40 kilometers into the sea. Why is that? So they can ensure that ships and spies, ships and cargo do not come close. We're talking about other powers like China, India, Russia, and so on, but even so, neither side liked the first party. The displaced inhabitants of the Chagos Islands, we're talking about around 10,000 people, 10,000 individuals. These people don't want financial compensation. They want to return to this island. They have a strong connection to the land, a strong connection to the seas of this island. So what do they want? They want to go back to it. The other party is President Trump. Trump was surprised by this agreement, meaning he completely rejected it. Why? Because America now has major concerns, saying that this step could just be the beginning of expelling American and British forces from the region. Why? Because now there is recognition of Mauritius' sovereignty. Now it has sovereignty over these islands, and there is only a lease contract. This means that at any moment the government of Mauritius could decide to terminate this lease, after gaining this sovereignty, of course, by a decision to cancel the lease contract. At that point, the American forces will be required to leave this island. By mistake, as it is said, by a British mistake, meaning a mistake made by Starmer, but as I will explain to you, it is not really a mistake. Starmer made statements saying that this was the only possible solution. He said that Britain had no other option but to recognize the sovereignty of Mauritius. And leasing these islands, he said if you didn't do this, you would lose the island and with it those military bases there. So he found that this was the solution. Why? Because of Mauritius? I mean, as I have explained to you, Mauritius won all the political, diplomatic and legal bets. It became necessary for Britain to leave these islands. Also, Trump found himself facing a new predicament that he never expected at all. and the government of Mauritius issued a decision banning the deployment of nuclear weapons in this military base. That means Mauritius said, yes, we will allow you to rent this island, but with a strict condition, without the right to store or deploy any of these nuclear weapons there. Why did Mauritius make this decision? Because it is one of the African countries that signed a treaty called the Pelindaba Treaty. The Pelindaba Treaty requires that African territories be free of any nuclear weapons. Storing nuclear weapons there is prohibited. Therefore, this was something Trump did not expect at all. He wanted to use this strategic location as a future threat with such nuclear weapons. So America knows very well that this is only the beginning. What's next? What is it? That Mauritius will expel the American and British forces from the region. Why? Because here we are talking about a country that is friendly with China. There are very strong ties between Mauritius and China. Mauritius was the first African country to sign a free trade agreement with China. It is considered China's gateway, the gateway for Chinese investors to southern Africa, to the African continent. The two countries have an agreement to conduct trade in their local currencies instead of the dollar. China invests in many projects and very important projects in the infrastructure of Mauritius, in the renewable energy sector, in the transportation sector, and also in communications. We also find that the Chinese are the largest foreign community present today in Mauritius. There are about, when we talk about the community by nationality, by ethnicity, there are about 16,000 Chinese living in Mauritius. And keep in mind that we're talking about a population that barely exceeds 1 million people. So when we say 16,000 Chinese, this number of Chinese is significant compared to the total population. Then we cannot forget that Mauritius is a country that does not have an army. This country is one of the few countries in the world that does not have military forces. It only has security forces and Coast Guard forces. Therefore, it relies on security alliances, it relies on protection from these international powers, and it maintains these alliances. Mauritius also cooperates with France in terms of security, so we see that it relies on India and France for security and relies on China economically. And history has proven that the first step to controlling countries is not through alliances and military or security partnerships, but by controlling the vital sectors, the economy. This is what China is doing today with all the countries of the world, not just with Mauritius, China today. It can be described as a sleeping dragon. When this dragon wakes up, the world will realize that it is under its influence in an indirect way. So pay attention. Today we see that China controls the ports of Mauritius, controls all telecommunications facilities, and controls the power stations. So any crisis in the region in Mauritius will leave Mauritius at the mercy of the Chinese. China will offer help, and Mauritius will have to accept this help and accept being an ally of China at that point. So Trump made very strong statements. What did he say? He said, if we feel there is a threat planning to expel us from this base, then we will occupy Mauritius. But the equation here is not easy, as some might think. It's just statements, just threats. All these countries that don't have strong relations with Mauritius will not allow America to do this. They will not allow America to occupy this country. Although there are major conflicts today between India and the Chinese, both agree on defending Mauritius and preventing or expelling America from this region. So in reality, what is this agreement between Mauritius and Britain? In truth, what is it, really? Is it a blow to Britain? Hitting Britain is painful for America. This is just a prelude to expelling American forces from the region and from this base. Britain doesn't care about the matter. Britain will forget about protecting it today or tomorrow. It will forget about protecting this region. But for America, this area is very important. So today, Britain sent a warning message to America. Stay away from these plans regarding Greenland and Canada, or else it will become a disaster for America in this region. Without this base, America won't be able to impose its intervention as a policeman in all these areas I mentioned, Yemen, Iran, and the Middle East in general. So, these are all rapid changes happening today. I believe they are preparing for very significant things to come. All we have to do is wait. Peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings. See you next time.